In 1975, they connected a vibrational detecting device to an unfertilized egg, and they got a rhythmic pulsing beat just like that of a human heart or pulse. What is generally an unfertilized egg? Why, they kind of share with me quickly from the audience? What's the difference between an unfertilized egg and a fertilized egg? Chicken didn't mate, no males around. Yet they have detected, and that experiment has been tried and tried again, some kind of rhythm or pulse within that egg itself. They also found in vertebrates, those that have a central vertebral column again, a spine, if you would, that on the phases and oscillations of the moon, that pulse varied, but was always even more intense. We understand that humans are the dominant species on this planet Earth. We are the masters, we are the greatest, and everything else is beneath us, right? Right. Right, yeah, right. The acorn, which has a seed, a phylum of vegetable and plant, contains everything in it that the seed needs to become a mighty oak, including a print on its phloem showing what it's going to look out when it matures, what it's going to look like. Isn't that interesting? Ever cut an acorn in part and looked at it? I mean, some of these mutated acorns now that have been gassed and pre-picked, you can't tell anything from. But get the real seed of a pure bone acorn, and what do you have when you cut it in half? Picture of a tree. I mean, that's somebody really blueprinted that one. They already said, this is what you're going to look like when you grow up. And that's just on a little acorn. Okay? Let's go to another phylum, an animated phylum, the silk moth. The silk moth reproduces and never mates. Reproduces without a mate. The lowly aphid reproduces without a mate. And as the ancient Egyptians tried to point out, the scarabus beetle reproduces without a mate and can shed its skin and goes along every 7 years quite well. It dies when it does mate. And if you remember, on the Ankh and the scarabus, you found in your Valley of the Kings, and you found again amongst the pyramid and on the Sphinx itself, that sacred symbol of the scarabus. They were trying to convey something. Most of us have forgotten or never knew what they were trying to convey. Dr. Edward Bischoff, MD, started this modern theory of epigenesis in 1854. I want you to jot down that date because people think this has been going along for a long time. It has not. That's close to the turn of the century. Dr. Edward Bischoff started the theory and the story of epigenesis in 1854. That is, that the zygote and the uterine development by union of sperm and egg was the way that humans get started. The first trimester after fetal conception. Before Bischoff's theory became accepted, and understand, it was presented on a paper as a theory, not an accepted fact. Later on, males and those who study under males have made it a fact that this is the way pregnancy starts. For centuries, people before that had believed in a theory of parthenogenesis. I repeat, parthenogenesis, and they even created under Grecian society, which had adopted and stole from the ancient Nubian society, the Parthenon. The idea for the Parthenon was not Greek. The idea that a temple toward bringing in gods was already being utilized on earth, and parthenogenesis or virgin birth was acceptable and was the more immaculate, wonderful way. All of your ancient gods, so-called, or avatars or presentors were said to have been of what? Virgin birth. Now we laugh at that. We lose so much in the vaginal uterine tract conceptory and bringing to term trimesters that there must be a better way. We have just forgotten that there was another way. In the year 1955, 4 prominent British doctors of medicine, and I like to use this amongst college students because when you say British doctors of medicine, then it makes it okay. Dr. Stanley Balfour Lynn, Dr. Bernard Camber, Dr. David Wine Williams, and Dr. A.E. Morant all studied some 10 classical cases of virgin births and agreed that all 10 of them were real, that in some way parthenogenesis, bringing to birth without the unit sperm and egg, had occurred in all 10 of those cases, barring nothing. The most famous or classical case of virgin birth was by Mrs. Emma Marie Jones, a German woman who during the height of the war, World War II, 1944, had been locked in her castle, a big estate, because it had been bombed, and everybody thought that everybody inside had been killed. And so for 17 months she stayed in there. She was not pregnant when she went in. When she came out, she was 9 months pregnant. There had been no men in there. There is another theory, the Ovis theory. The Ovis theory, pronounced Ovis, again, was named after the Roman poet and writer, again, of love-making and metaphors and so, Publius Ovidius Naso. By the way, I use him because he was a black man. Don't misunderstand. You cannot go to a so-called race of people and state whether or not, if they came from a certain country, they were black or white. All Romans were not white. In fact, most Italians now are mixed bloods. This theory was proven by Imhotep. This theory was revitalized by Pythagoras, again about 2500 BC. It was scientifically demonstrated again by the American biologist, Professor Jacques Loeb, Stanford, in the 40s, and utilizing artificial parthenogenesis in biological labs, this doctor once again proved the old Ovis theory was true, that the embryo develops from the egg alone and does not necessarily require spermatozoon, and that is the correct way. Here is the key. Hear it carefully. I usually speak pretty slowly when I'm giving lectures that are emphatic. Please hear what I'm saying and not what I didn't say. Varied forms of energy in the forms of radiation from any source, and including radiation from both the sun and